Good morning. This is Dan Williams and my Sunday school class for what's today's date? August 4th. And we're still in the book of Numbers, approaching the end of this book. I think it goes to 35 or 36. Today we're just looking at chapter 30 and the first three verses of 31, and we'll pick up there next week. So we're going to be. Today's lesson begins speaking about vows that we make. How important are our words? Remember Rush Limbaugh saying words mean things, and talking about the importance of the things that we say. So how important are our words? Our culture is filled with many words, many flippant words, curse words, angry words, harmful words, thoughtless words, unwise words, false words, a lot of lying, deceiving words. And of course, we even have words that make deceiving and lying words not seem that bad. Someone says, well, I misspoke. I didn't lie, I misspoke. What does that mean? Words mean things. It means you didn't tell the truth. Uh, but words are so important. Creation itself was spoken into being. We're made in the image of God, whose words have power. And this is certainly true. Our words have power to heal or destroy. You can encourage someone or put them down. You can make someone feel better, or you can make them feel worse by your words. Your words reveal what is in your heart. Out of the mouth come the words of destruction and hatred. It comes from the heart. You should think before you speak. But if we have the mind of Christ, our words of peace, truth, and wisdom will flow more naturally. Dwell on that for a second. If you are building a lifestyle of relationship to the Father and having the mind of Christ and letting the Holy Spirit be Himself in you, when bad things happen, things that would normally cause someone to have road rage, for instance, you as a believer, as a follower with the mind of Christ and the Spirit of the Lord in you, your response is less likely to be one of words of cursing and rage. More naturally, you'll see calmness come out of the mouth of a heart that is calm. I've got this little picture here. Some of you will remember these little statues. There was a whole slew of these little statues back in the 70s, and I had this one. It said, "Caution, be sure brain is engaged before putting mouth in gear." And Jesus said the same thing. He said, the things that come out of the mouth come from the heart, and these things defile a man. If the heart is wicked and what comes out of the mouth reveals what's in the heart, then it's like the defilement of a person is kind of established by his own words. And so we need to just realize how important our words are. And let's be all about sharing good words, encouraging words, words that point people to life and health and joy, all the good things that the Father wants us to be all about, with sharing the good news of the gospel. What is the difference between a vow and an oath? A vow is made to Yahweh. An oath is made between men. That's perhaps one definition, the difference between a vow and an oath. But the definition of a vow in the Hebrew Scriptures, called the Tanakh, as what we call the Torah, it's a promise to dedicate persons or property to God. A vow to Yahweh deserved careful thought on the part of the vower for three primary reasons. A vow creates a special relationship between the vower and the vowee. If you make a promise to your wife, well, there's a special relationship between you that facilitates you making that vow and keeping that vow. Same way with our relationship to God the Father. There's a relationship when He makes a promise to us because we're in a relationship with Him. He is faithful. Are we that faithful back to Him when we make a promise to Him? The promises are spoken voluntarily by the vower and must be fulfilled without delay. You know, we when we make an oath or vow a promise to God, it's never coerced. It's done voluntarily. And he says, if thou vowest a vow to God, defer not to pay it. Don't delay to pay it, for he takes no delight in fools. You can't say, you make a promise to God and 5 years later you hadn't kept it. That's foolishness. We need to do what we say we're going to do. The one making a vow to Yahweh must not make his vow to be conditional on whether or not God does something first. What an example of that is this: God, if you will get me out of this whatever predicament you're in, foxhole, bankruptcy, uh, nightmare, uh, if you get me out of this, I promise that I'll read my Bible to my family every night. Now, see, that's not the kind of deal we make with God. Although I can think of one example where a man did this, but he kept his vow. Um, it's Candace Sowards in our church. Her father uh, prayed a prayer to God when she was laying in a hospital after a horrific car wreck, and her life was hanging in the balance, and she could very well have died. And her dad prayed, God, if you let my daughter live, then I will follow through in uh, my promise I made to you to go into the ministry. See, he'd felt God's call to go into the ministry some years earlier, and he didn't follow through on it. And so I don't know if he made a promise to God that he would, but he knew God was calling him, and he said, "If you let my daughter live, then um, I will follow that command you gave to me to go into the ministry and be your servant as a preacher." And he did, and won many people to the Lord, and he's got a strong testimony about that. Did Yahushua forbid vows and oaths? Well, some have taken a wrong idea about what Yahushua spoke. We're going to see this in a second, as though we're never to make any vows or take any oaths. Well, if that were the case, then no one would be allowed to make wedding vows or serve as a juror in a court of law where you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Now, I took this from the New King James in Matthew, and this what I copied here was this heading copied from Bible Gateway. This heading is what many Bibles have added. This is not scripture where it says Jesus forbids oaths. He did not forbid oaths, but it can be misconstrued that that's what he's saying here, because it says, again, you have heard it said of those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform your oaths to the Lord. But I say to you, don't swear at all, neither by heaven, for it's God's throne, nor his footstool, etc., etc. It says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. So we see this. It says, do not swear at all, and there's a semicolon, or it could have been a period. See, there's no punctuation in the original that's here. And the way that this needs to be understood is that I say to you, don't swear falsely, like it says, don't lie in your oaths to God. He says, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform your oaths to the Lord. What he's saying here is don't add to your oath. Don't swear by heaven or by earth or anything else by your own head, because you cannot make one hair white or black. But just simply the point he was saying is let your yes be yes and your no be no. For whatever is more than these is from the evil one. Let me explain that a little further. Adding to your yes and no is like saying, I swear on my mother's grave that I did not take your phone, as if that gives added weight to your words because your words alone are not really binding enough. And you can say, well, I swear I didn't take your phone. Well, but if I say I swear on my mother's grave I didn't take your phone, oh, well, that's different. No, that's all you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. So, what he's saying here, it's not that, but I say to you, don't swear at all. It's that I'm telling you, don't swear by heaven and earth or your mother's grave or anything else. Just simply be true to your words. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. You're still to perform your oath to the Lord. Just do what you say you're going to do. I explain it this way a little further. Have you ever said, I said I would do that, but I didn't promise? As if we should not be held to our word because we did not add an oath to our yes or no. That's a good example. People say, well, I didn't promise I'd do that. Yeah, I said I'd do it, but somehow that's the adding to the oath is more binding. Or how many of us as kids we remember doing this? Said they made a little kid made a promise, but they said, "Well, I had my fingers crossed, so my promise was nullified." Who else but the evil one would come up with such a practice? Where did kids get that? They learned it from older adults, perhaps. Saw that some kids shared that, and the other kids say, "Oh, all you got to do is cross your fingers when you say you're going to do something, when you promise something, and it nullifies it." No, that's an evil thing, and we need to let our yes be yes and our no be no. But here's why I belabor this point today. These New Testament words of Yahushua have been misconstrued to be another example, kind of like misconstruing Peter's vision. People think that's about food. It's not about food. Of how Yahushua came to change or do away with the law of Moses. He did not. He did not. And so when you look at these words like what we just said, his instruction, it says, you've heard it said, but I say this. It's not that he's saying the opposite. He's interpreting it correctly. Just like you've, heard it, someone hits you, you hit them back. Well, I'm telling you, if someone hits you, turn the other cheek. Well, that just sounds like something the opposite. Well, it's more of a clarification of what we are to do when we are attacked. There's a giving a godly definition to how we are to behave. So now we're at Numbers 30, verse 1. And Moses spoke to the heads of the tribes concerning the children of Israel, saying, This is the thing which Yahweh hath commanded. If a man vow a vow unto Yahweh and swear an oath to bind his soul with a bond, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceedeth out of his mouth. Okay, do what you say you're going to do. Ecclesiastes puts it this way: better is it that thou shouldst not vow than that you should vow and not pay. What your lips have uttered is what you must keep in Deuteronomy. So our words are very, very important to the Father because it reveals the truthfulness in our heart. A man is answerable directly to God and responsible for his vows that he makes. And what we're going to see in these next few verses is an umbrella of protection. It says a woman, whether single or married, has an umbrella of protection that God has placed over her in her father or her husband. If her father or husband objects to her vow, she's released from her vow before God. This is not anything a woman ought to object to, complaining about equal rights or something, because a man is not given the luxury of getting a second opinion about some stupid thing he may blurt out as a promise to God. So, verse 3 of chapter 30, if a woman also vow a vow unto God and bind herself by a bond, being in her father's house in her youth, and her father hear her vow and her bond wherewith she had bound her soul, and her father, if he doesn't say anything, if he holds her peace, then her vow is going to stand. And every bond wherewith she hath bound her soul shall stand. What God is setting up here, an umbrella of protection. And it looks like this. There's God. Here's the daughter. Well, this would be like the daughter and her father. The same is true for a husband and a wife, and that's what you'll see here in a second. But if her father disallow her in the day that he heard it, not any of her vows or of her bonds with which she hath bound her soul shall stand. So her vow is declared null and void if her father disallows it. And Yahweh shall forgive her because her father disallowed her. Well, the same is going to be true in this analogy for a husband and wife. And if she had at all a husband when she vowed or uttered aught out of her lips wherewith she bound her soul, if her husband heard it and didn't say anything, well, then whatever she said is going to stand. But if her husband disallowed her, objected, he shall make her vow which she vowed and that which she uttered with her lips of none effect, and Yahweh shall forgive her. So what is this saying? It's talking about an order or design that God has set up for how we are to live. The husband under God, and he's an umbrella of protection over his wife. And the same way with a daughter or a son, or a daughter here particularly. It's just speaking of a woman, of a daughter and her father. But what about a widow, a single or divorced woman? Her vows stand as she is not under the guidance or counsel of a husband, or even her father, since she's already left her home to be one with her husband. So that's what this says in verse 9, 10, 11, 12. But every vow of a widow and of her that is divorced, so divorced people existed, it's acknowledged, wherewith they have bound their souls shall stand against her. And if she vowed in her husband's house while she was married, or bound her soul by a bond with an oath, and her husband heard it and held it, just kind of reiterates this, if he held his peace and disallowed her not, then all her vows shall stand, and every bond where she bound herself shall stand. But if her husband objected, then her husband hath made them void, and Yahweh shall forgive her. But when I was reading this and studying this, I saw something 7 years ago, and I even kept the date here. Hold the phone. July 22nd, 7 years ago. I just now saw something incredible hidden in where this is all going. Do you see a parallel in this next part about the bride and our husband? It's talking about husbands and wives. Well, we are the bride, and God is our husband. Jesus is the bridegroom. Every vow and every binding oath to afflict the soul, her husband may establish it, of her husband may, or her husband may make it void. We who have broken our vows to God and given our allegiance to the evil one have souls that are destined for affliction, death. But our husband, Jesus, chose to make our oaths void. How did he do that? He did that on the cross. If her husband altogether hold his peace from her from day to day, then he established all her vows. If he didn't say anything, he established it. He held his peace at her in the day that he heard them. Our husband Jesus, he allowed our sins to be established day by day as he held his peace while we wandered away from him. But he did not hold his peace indefinitely. He spoke up. But if he shall anyways make them void after that he hath heard them, then he shall bear her iniquity. That's the phrase that really caught me there. Our husband, Jesus, we're the bride, has chosen to make our transgressions void, and he bore our iniquities upon himself on the cross. God hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. These are the statutes which Yahweh commanded Moses between a man and his wife, between the father and his daughter, being yet in her youth in her father's house. Okay, there's the sum of that. Now, Numbers 31 takes a different turn. It's a different subject, if you will. And it's talking about death and what's knowing whether or not you're going to die. And this is because Moses was told that he's about to die. And so this got me to thinking about this. How did Moses react when he was told, Moses, you're going to go up in this mountain, you're going to die, but you've got one more battle you need to fight against the Midianites. So he knew he had a limited time. Well, how would you hope you would react if you knew you had only about 6 months to live? My sister, Rose, was told, it's been 2.5 years. She was told 2.5 years ago, well, 3.5 years ago, that she had pancreatic cancer, and that she had less than a year to live. And so this really was kind of a shock to her because she was in good health. She thought ready for retirement, golden years. She was 67 when she got this news, and she died when she was 68. But how would you hope you would react? I remember that my sister one time in the car coming back from a cancer treatment, she said, knowing you're dying is really a gift. Wow. That's the way I would want to react. And I understand what she meant by that, because she was more concerned for her husband, who had a lot of health problems and was 10 years older than her. And it forced her to get ducks in a row and get things ready if she wasn't there for him, which she could have been killed any day anyway. She could have been hit in a car wreck and died. And she took it as a gift to know that you've got only a certain amount of time to live. So how would you hope to react? I think I would hope that this would be my reaction. I would want to draw as close to God as possible every day and find out what he wants me to do with the rest of the months that I have to live. I would hope that I would not get angry about things that have no bearing on eternity. So some people get all bent out of shape if the garbage disposal doesn't work. Why get so upset and angry and bent out of shape of earthly things that go wrong? Don't get upset about things that have no bearing on eternity. I would hope that I would have a burning need to share the gospel more boldly with lost people. I would want to read his word more and increase faith in him. That's how I hope I would react if I knew I only had 6 months to live. But how would you hope that you would not react? Let's look at the other side of this. If you knew you had only about 6 months to live. And what you see in this list might remind you of what is more likely to be the reaction of people who do not have assurance of salvation, who do not know the Lord. It'd be things like this: be bitter or angry, and people can start blaming God for everything. God, shaking their fist at God. God, why did you let this happen to me? I'm young. I was just about to go into retirement or whatever, and get angry and bitter. I would hope I would not react that way. Focus all of my mind, strength, and will on myself and my problem. I would not want my last 6 months. The legacy I left was, well, he sure hated to go, and he complained about it every day of his problems. I would not want that to be my reaction. I would definitely not want to fall into depression or self-pity. You're not going to be of any use to anybody else. I would hope I would not lose faith or neglect his word. I'm thinking of a man, Betty Hayes' son, who died several years ago, and he had cancer, and I went and saw him over and across town in about the 6th month of his cancer, and he lived only about 3 or 4 months beyond the time I saw him. And he said, these last 6 months have been the best 6 months of my life. That's kind of like my sister saying, knowing you're dying is a gift. That kind of shocked me he said that. But he said that these last 6 months, knowing that I'm dying, he responded in a good way. He cherished each day. He said every day is a gift. He told his wife every day he loved her. She treated him with such loving kindness. It ministered to him. And he said the best years of my married life were these last 6, because I knew I was dying, and we cherished each other much more. Wow, what a different perspective. Well, guess what? You are going to die at some point in the not too distant future. And that's in the big scheme of things. You know, we take for granted, oh, I've got 10, 15, 20 years left to live. You don't know that you've got another month left. And besides, what would be 10, 15, 20 years in the scheme of things? There's so many verses in the Bible that speak about the brevity of life. Life is a vapor, a will o' the wisp. It's like grass that withers, or it's a wind that passes by. You know, we're all going to die, and I put parentheses, unless Yahusha comes first, then we will be translated into his presence. But why? So why not heed all of these words? Live in a constant realization we're just passing through. You know, I heard this morning, it's actually on the Lutheran Hour. Um, it was a phrase that a preacher said, many people think we're here on this earth, we're in the land of the living. This is the land of the living, and we're headed for the land of the dying. He said, no, it's for the believer, for the Christian, for the follower of Yahusha. It's the opposite of that. We're amongst the dead. We were dead in our trespasses and sins. Everybody we're rubbing elbows against, dead in their trespass. We're in the land of the dead, but we're headed for the land of the living, everlasting. I love that. Keep that in your mind. Now, chapter 31, it says, and Yahweh, just three verses of this, and Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, this is before Moses, you're going to die, but before you die, I've got something I want you to do. Avenge the children of Israel of the Midianites. Afterwards, you shall be gathered to your people. You're going to die after you fight this battle. Before you die, Moses, go and fight a war with the Midianites. Then you're going to die. Two points here. Yahweh can use you here on this earth for his purposes right up until the time you die. I've known some that they physically can't do what they used to do, but they're still praying for people. They're still writing cards for people. They're still giving a good word. They're still witnessing. They may be in a hospital bed or a nursing home, but they're seeking to be a blessing to other people. God can use you here on this earth for his purposes. And the second point, if you have been told you have, say, 2 months to live, that does not mean you lay down in despair and quit serving him. You get energized to do more for him, because you don't want to stand before God empty-handed. No, I want to, um, when I die, take a lot of fruit with me. Not selfishly that I need a lot of stars in my crown, but I pass all that. We're gonna lay our crowns at his feet. We're gonna give him glory, and I want to have a lot to be able to give him glory about. So, Moses, here's the last verse. And Moses spake to the people, saying, arm some of yourselves unto the war, and let them go up against the Midianites, and avenge Yahweh of Midian. Young's literal translation in Hebrew says, to put the vengeance of Jehovah on Midian. God was very, very angry against the Midianites because the people of Israel in the camp had a cancer among them that came from the Midianites. And we learned all about that with from the doctrine of Balaam and what happened to the Midianite, how they were seducing the men sexually and then getting them to worship false gods. And so we're going to next week pick up this battle that they're going to fight against the Midianites. But an entire nation can be deemed as guilty, and Yah may bring judgment upon a nation. I say that because look at the nation of America. We are a guilty nation. Our laws provide for the killing of the unborn. Our laws um, go the opposite of a lot of the Torah laws and God's ways and his instruction. And so our nation can be deemed guilty. Now, there are righteous individuals and people that are definitely saved and will survive uh, any trial and tribulation and judgment that comes from the Father. He'll lead us through. The ark went through the flood, the judgment upon the earth. We'll be like that in Christ. But realize that our nation, we must pray for our nation here this election year. our nation is can be deemed even more and more. How guilty can this nation be before God comes and brings judgment? I believe we're nearing that point. Well, I'm going to leave you with the song that I shared this a couple weeks ago, but I'm going to do it again. It's the only one I could think of. It's a song called Ready, Ready to Go. It speaks about being ready to withstand the onslaught, the attack of the devil, taking up the shield of faith. I'm ready if he comes again in the clouds. I'm ready to meet him, but I'm also ready to die. If I were to die today, I can say I am ready. Now, if I knew for certain I only had a few short days or weeks to live, yes, it would jerk me around a little bit, say, ooh, there's some things more I want to do for the kingdom. But we all need to be ready to go, ready to serve, ready to do his will. All right, blessings to you, and I'll see you next week.
I am so ready to go. I am so ready. am so ready to go. Let's go to where sin is no more. Yahusha is the door to peace forevermore. Let's go. The bridegroom's on his way. Today could be the day. That's why I shout and say, let's go. I am so ready, I am so ready. I am so ready